Today we're going to make some energy bars, and I found a recipe online, and we're just going to use in place of the Great Northern beans, we're going to replace it with some tempeh, and we're going to use about half a pound, and we're going to cook it down with some brown rice syrup. And I'm going to do this step for you so that I have it for my beans. So the tempeh is going to get finely ground, and the tempeh is very easy to cut. It's simply soybeans that have been fermented, and so they're a lot like Great Northern beans, but they're a little bit easier for us to digest. So I'm going to go ahead and slice those and put them into this food processor. Sometimes it's easier to break things up when we use a food processor. Now you want to make sure that you have it plugged in, and that everything is assembled as it should be. Okay, now we have some finely ground tempeh that we're just going to put into the pan with our brown rice syrup and cook it down for a little while. Here's the tempeh and the brown rice syrup, and I added about a cup of water as well, and I'm gonna cook this over the stove till it starts to thicken up and come together and the tempeh is fully cooked, and that should take about 20 minutes. So as I'm waiting for my tempeh to cook, I'm gonna go ahead and prepare the pan. So the recipe calls for lining the pan with foil. And so it's easy to sort of figure out how much foil you need by measuring as much as it is, and then a little bit longer because it's got to go down inside. So we try to evenly space that out and then push it down into the pan all the way to the bottom. The side should be a little bit easier, but you want to kind of just work it. You don't have to force it at all. The nice thing about lining your pan with foil ahead of time is that your finished bars will be easy to lift out. Now, if you want the bars to separate from the foil, you're going to want to lightly oil the foil itself. So, as you can see, mine is not perfect and yours does not need to be either. But the pan's lined with oil, and then you can use a cooking spray to just lightly spray the inside with oil. So it's ready for us to use. Then I want to go through my recipe and make sure that I have all of my ingredients. So I have my granola cereal, and for chopped pitted dates at Weaver Street you can find these date pieces. And so this is dates that have had the nuts removed and everything, and they're really easy to work with, and they're rolled in coconut. So I found that I could fit 2 of these date pieces in a 1/4 cup. So I know that there are about 8 dates pieces to a cup. So I have 8 date pieces, and what I did with mine is I took them and I used a knife to cut them into some pieces. And I mixed in some of the coconut in the recipe to get these small little pieces that'll be easier to combine later. And you would just use a knife and just slice them up. And then I also have my coconut, and some of it is mixed in with my date pieces as well. I also have brown sugar. It calls for whole wheat pastry flour, but because we're gluten-free in this household, I have some gluten-free flour that I'm going to use. I have cinnamon, a 1/2 cup of raisins. It calls for chopped walnuts or almonds, and I find that with any recipe that calls for nuts, you can use the type of nut that you like, and you can replace it. I'm going to use pecans because I didn't have any, and it's really easy if you want to chop them to put them in a Ziploc bag and just lay that Ziploc bag and use a rolling pin to bang it together. And then you'll get nice small pieces. For you, I provide you with almond slivers. They probably don't need to have anything done with them. Again, we're mixing the tempeh and the brown rice syrup in place of the beans and the honey, and that's cooking away right now. For the margarine or the butter, you want melted. And so when you're going to melt something, it's really easy to use the microwave, but I want to be sure to use a bowl that's much larger so it doesn't sputter out when it's fully melted. And I would just go ahead and cut for 3 tablespoons. But that's really big, and I find it melts faster if I cut it into smaller pieces and put them into the bowl. So I'm just going to cut that into some smaller pieces. Still the same for 3 tablespoons. And before I put it in the microwave, I'm going to go ahead and cover it so that if it fully melts and it starts sputtering, it's not going to get all over the inside of the microwave. And we're going to go ahead and microwave that for 30 seconds. I'm going to give the tempeh a turn. Okay, now we have the margarine. Oil, it says canola oil. I have olive oil. You can use just about any oil that you want. Vanilla and salt. So I know I have all the ingredients that I need to put this together. Okay, the tempeh mixture is finished, and I just turned off the heat, and you can see that it's really thickened up. And so when this cools, we'll start assembling our bars. The nice thing about this tempeh mixture is that it's a really high protein component for your energy bar. So not only is it going to taste good, but it's going to give you a lot of sustained energy. Okay, so now that our tempeh mixture is finished, we're going to go ahead and assemble the bars to bake. But before we assemble the bars to bake, we want to make sure we have the things that we need and that the oven is preheating. So we're going to preheat our oven to 350. And we're going to need a mixer to use. So we're going to go ahead and put everything into the bowl. When I read through the ingredients as stated, or through the recipe, it stated to combine the honey and the margarine and the butter and the vanilla and the salt in a smaller bowl, but we're just going to go ahead and sort of skip over that since the brown rice syrup, which we used in place of honey, is already mixed into the tempeh. So we're just going to mix everything together in one big bowl. So we'll just go down our list. So we need the granola cereal, our dates, which have been chopped up into smaller pieces, and the coconut that was in there. The rest of the coconut to make 1 cup. Our brown rice, our brown sugar, our flour, we're going to need some cinnamon, and we need 1 teaspoon. And add a teaspoon of cinnamon. Our tempeh mixture, so when you're using wet ingredients and you're kind of putting them in there, you can see lots of stuff ends up inside. So it's good to have a spatula to be able to scrape down the sides and put that in there. Then we have our raisins. Our nuts, you're going to be using almonds, and I have pecans. So I'm going to go ahead and put my pecans in there. The honey's replaced by the brown rice syrup that was in our tempeh. And we have our melted butter that we had put in the microwave. We want some canola oil, but I have olive, and as I said, you can replace a lot of oils. Some people don't like to use olive oil in baked goods because they can taste it. I don't really mind. So that's 2 tablespoons. A teaspoon of vanilla. And 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. I don't have 1/8 of a teaspoon, so I'm going to go ahead and just use, eyeball, about half of a quarter. Now we're going to go ahead and mix these all together. Because we have big chunks, we probably don't want to go too fast. We would much rather stir it together on a lower speed. The lower speed allows things to combine without necessarily breaking all of our pieces apart. Once everything seems to be combined, we'll mix it in our pan. So now that we've taken the bar out of the mixer, we're going to press it into the pan. Now you can use a spatula to help press it, or you could go ahead and use some slightly moist fingers, which always helps. So I'm going to get mine wet and go ahead and press this into the pan. And you want to get this nice and even. It's okay to use your hands with food as long as your hands are clean, especially since we're going to cook this afterwards. Now that we have it relatively evened out, it's ready for the oven. While our bar is cooking, let's not forget to do our dishes. So just pulled these out of the oven and they look golden brown on the sides, and we have to remember to be sure to turn our oven off. Now be sure to let these cool in the pan before you cut them. You should be able to easily lift them out by the foil liner. Hope you enjoy.